exercise. I know all of that. It's also the one that gets people into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So I have to start because everyone who sees me comes with a back compromise. So I start with an examination of their hips. Now, this is very important. If you were to take what's called the Dalmatian hip, which is very much a Eastern European hip, Croatia up into Bulgaria, Poland, Western Russia, the Ukraine, the hips are very shallow in front, which allows a deep squat.
Yes.
So I start with a hip exam. You've seen me do this on the assessment DVD where I place the person on their back and I scour their femur around, determining the shape of the acetabulum or the hip socket.
Yep.
Now, the countries I just named have a very high rate of hip dysplasia, but they are also the source of the Olympic lifters. And it's not happenstance, it's form and function. So that type of hip creates tremendous power coming out of the hole or the bottom of the squat. Now let's take the archetypical anatomical antithesis, which is what I call the Scottish hip, which you know what my name is.
Sure.
So the Celtic Scottish hip typically, not always, I'm just talking generalizations here, tends to be a much deeper hip socket. And when I do the hip exam, the knee doesn't come right up to the chest. It actually squares across. So if I were to set up the same depth of squat, either they're going to get a bad back or they're going to damage the labrum at the front of the hip joint. So they start getting anterior hip joint pain. So do you see how you want to know what the perfect squat is? I want to know from the hip exam what they're capable of anatomically. Now, the Scottish hip, I mean, there's a reason why they don't produce many Olympic lifters, because you can't pull a bar off the floor. It's too low. But they sure as hell can throw a caber. And my point is, with that type of hip, the power production is in the top half of the squat, not the bottom half. So you've got to figure this out now. Also, when you do that hip exam, you're going to find the optimal knee width. And you'll find in most people, particularly with the shallower hip socket, their knees should be much wider than they normally set up with. So it's the difference between, say, an Olympic pull and a power pull or squat. In any case, I work hard to get perfect alignment through the knee and the ankle hinge and proper width through those exams that I've just described. Then I want to see how they're going to rack the bar. So if it's a squat, I'm assuming it's a back squat with the bar across the shoulders?
Yeah.
Okay. Most people carry the bar far too high, and now if they're really competitive, they'll know all this, but the trick is not to carry the bar high on the traps. It's to carry them down on the rhomboids. There's a little shelf that nooks in there. So if I'm setting up a competitive squat, I need the bar placement down there. Now, they may not have the shoulders that allow it, so I might have to build some a bit more shoulder mobility. I may have to build some thoracic spine extension. You've seen some of the stretch work that we do there. And then now we're starting to set up for the squat. The hand width on the bar is very important. I know some guys advocate a suicide grip with the thumb on the same side as the fingers. I do not. I like good grip on the bar because when you're getting down into the hole, I need them to grip the bar and then externally rotate to really bring in latissimus dorsi, not only as a bigger spine extensor all the way down to the sacrum, but also a bigger core stiffener. And then, of course, with the technique, again, I need to know now their leg length to body length ratio and how far they have to get the hips back or forward, how vertical they can carry their body, and all of these kinds of things to determine how much spreading of the floor, if you know what I mean by that, and external rotation through the hips that I need to pull. But you were talking about the fellows who they've been lifting a few years now and they know how to squat. The next thing I would look for is, as they're going into the depth of squat, I'm assuming they want to go as deep as possible just for fun. I'm looking for the back break angle. That's where does the pelvis start to pull away from the L5 vertebra or at the lumbosacral junction. So if they want a competitive lift and it's a power lift and they have to, say it's IPF rules, International Powerlifting Federation rules, they've got to have the top of the thigh parallel. Again, how much they're going to train that if they have a Scottish hip, I would really have to make a judgment call when I saw it. So some people will get away with a slight amount of flexion at the bottom. Some people, they will wear out that disc and eventually get a bulge. So, but remember, most people that I will be starting with will already have a bulge, and yet I've got to get them back to world-class performance. So I might do some hip work at that point. Might work more on style and bring their hips underneath. Again, I don't know till I saw their body type. I might do a lot of corrective work just in the front squat, and not with a bar. I would take either a kettlebell in a goblet squat, holding on the horns out in front, or I might just take a 45-pound plate, hold the 45-pound plate out in front, and if they're reasonably well trained, hold it out at arm's length. Now they can squat with the body almost vertical all the way down, really open up the hip joints, and start to develop a bit more motion through there. I might cue some psoas contraction to assist. I might actually have them pull down. In other words, they have bar overhead cables and elastics, and they have to pull themselves down into a perfect squat position, which is another little trick for getting them down into that perfect position, minimizing the back break. More gluteal dominance versus hamstring extension dominance is another trick. If they have anterior hip joint labrum pain. Anyway, it's endless. As I said, if you have 3 hours, I can coach a squat for you. And it's anyway. That's the world I live in.